still remember that night like it just happened yesterday. The soft glow of the kitchen lights, the smell of burnt garlic, and the way my husband, Ryan, looked at me, that half smirk on his face that said everything without a single word. Babe, he sighed, poking the soggy pasta on his plate. Maybe cooking just isn't your thing. It was supposed to be our first home-cooked dinner since we'd moved into our new apartment in Seattle. I'd spent all afternoon watching YouTube recipes, trying to make something that would impress him. Creamy Alfredo with garlic bread and roasted veggies. But somewhere between the sauce and the timing, everything went wrong. The noodles were overcooked, the sauce was too salty, and the bread, well, let's just say the smoke alarm went off twice. I forced a smile, but deep down, his words stung more than I wanted to admit. I laughed it off. Yeah, maybe you're right, I said, pretending to joke. But inside, I felt small, like I'd just failed at something simple. Something every wife should know, as Ryan once put it when he was comparing me to his mom's cooking. He didn't mean to sound cruel, or maybe he didn't realize how his tone cut through me. But that night, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just about the pasta anymore. It was about the way he looked at me, the way he didn't believe in me. Later that evening, while he watched TV, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at that cold plate of food. I thought about how much effort I'd put into it, the planning, the excitement, the hope that he'd smile and say, "Wow, this is amazing." Instead, all I got was a careless shrug and a smirk. For the first time, I wondered if Ryan ever really saw how hard I tried, not just in cooking, but in everything. I wasn't the kind of woman who liked to prove people wrong. But something in me refused to let that moment define me. I cleaned the kitchen that night in silence, every clatter of the dishes echoing like a promise, a quiet one, a promise that one day, I'd make something so good, he wouldn't have words, only regret for ever doubting me. The next morning, Ryan acted like nothing happened. He kissed me goodbye before leaving for work, humming to himself. Like he hadn't bruised my confidence just 12 hours ago. I watched him leave, then sat down with my coffee, scrolling through recipes again. But this time, it wasn't for fun, it was war preparation. Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that heals. I was going to learn, really learn, not because I needed his validation, but because I wanted to find mine. That week, I started watching real chefs, Gordon Ramsay, Ina Garten, and this sweet woman named Lisa from YouTube who cooked with so much love it made me tear up. Sometimes, I began practicing small things every day, chopping, seasoning, timing. I burned a few more pans, yes, but slowly, something started to click. And then, one evening, Ryan came home early. I was in the kitchen, flour on my cheek, trying to perfect a pie crust. He laughed. "You're still trying that cooking thing?" The way he said it, it wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was that same tone people use when they don't believe you'll ever really succeed. I didn't respond. I just smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm trying." He kissed my forehead and went to shower, leaving me with his echoing laughter in the air. And as I rolled that dough, I whispered to myself, "You just wait, Ryan, one day, I'll make something you'll never forget." Little did I know that day would come sooner than I thought. And when it did, it wouldn't just change the way he saw my cooking. It would change everything about our marriage. The next few weeks turned my kitchen into a battlefield. Not the kind with shouting or chaos, but the quiet kind, where every mistake feels like a small loss and every success feels like a tiny miracle. Every evening, after work, I'd tie my hair up, roll up my sleeves, and face the stove like it was my greatest enemy and my closest friend. There was something oddly peaceful about it, the sound of onions sizzling, the rhythm of chopping vegetables, the smell of butter melting in a pan. I started to realize that cooking wasn't just about food. It was about patience and love. At first, Ryan didn't notice much. He was usually buried in work or watching sports, tossing casual remarks my way like, "Smells better than last time," or "Don't burn the house down, Chef Elena." I'd just smile, say nothing, and keep going. Because deep down, I wasn't cooking for him anymore. I was cooking for me. The turning point came one Sunday afternoon. I'd invited my best friend, Mia, over. She's the kind of person who speaks her mind, brutally honest but with a heart of gold. When she saw my kitchen counter covered in ingredients, her eyebrows shot up. "Oh, girl, what's all this? You opening a restaurant or something?" I laughed. "Just trying to learn." Mia tilted her head. "Ryan's still teasing you about that dinner?" I nodded quietly. "Yeah. But it's not about him anymore. I just want to be good at something that used to scare me." She grinned. "Then let's make him eat his words." Literally, that day, we cooked together chicken parmesan, roasted veggies, and a chocolate mousse that took 3 failed tries but finally came out perfect. When Ryan came home that evening, I didn't say a word. I just set the table and watched his reaction. He looked surprised, maybe even a little impressed. "You made all this?" he asked, eyeing the golden crust on the chicken. Yeah, I said softly, wiping my hands on a towel. He took a bite. Then another, and then. Silence. I waited, pretending not to care, but inside my heart was pounding like a drum. Finally, he said, "Wow, this is actually really good." It wasn't much, but coming from him, it felt like a standing ovation. That small compliment fueled me more than he knew. It wasn't victory yet, but it was the first spark of one. Over the next few weeks, my kitchen became my sanctuary. When I felt lonely, I baked. When I was angry, I cooked spicy food. When I missed who I used to be, hopeful, creative, and brave, I'd try a new recipe just to remind myself I still could be her. Ryan started noticing changes. The burnt meals disappeared. The takeout boxes piled up less. Sometimes he'd come home early just to peek into the kitchen. One evening, he leaned against the counter and said, "You're really getting good at this." I smiled. "Told you, I'm learning," he nodded. "Guess I was wrong about you not being a cook." Those words should have made me happy, and for a moment they did. But then, a tiny ache in my chest whispered, why did he ever have to doubt me at all? That night, as I cleaned the dishes, I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, tired, but stronger than I'd ever been. And I thought about how sometimes the people closest to us don't realize how deeply their words can cut. They don't mean to break us, but they do. And when they do, we either stay broken, or we rebuild into someone they never expected. And I had rebuilt. By the end of that month, I'd started posting pictures of my meals on Instagram. Nothing fancy, just small things like Sunday dinner done right or homemade feels better. To my surprise, people loved them. Friends commented, strangers followed, and a local food blogger even messaged me saying, "You've got real talent." When I showed Ryan, he chuckled. "Guess people like simple stuff." I just smiled. Yeah, simple, but inside, I knew it wasn't simple at all. It was growth. And with every meal I made, every compliment I got, I could feel the revenge, not in anger, but in pride, because one day soon, I was going to do something big. Something that would make him realize that the woman he once thought couldn't cook was capable of far more than he'd ever imagined, and that moment was closer than either of us knew. Asterisk. By the time fall rolled around, the air outside smelled like cinnamon and pumpkin spice, and my kitchen smelled even better. Cooking had stopped being a challenge. It had become therapy. Some nights I'd lose track of time completely, music playing softly, the sound of sizzling filling the silence that used to hang heavy between Ryan and me. It wasn't just food anymore. It was me reclaiming a part of myself I didn't even know I'd lost. Ryan, of course, noticed the changes, though he didn't say much. He'd come home, hang his jacket, and stand by the kitchen doorway just watching me. Sometimes he'd smile, sometimes he'd look almost confused, like he couldn't figure out when exactly I'd changed. "Hey, chef," he'd joke now and then. "What's on the menu tonight?" And I'd answer with quiet confidence, "Something you'll remember." There was a new rhythm in the house. He started sitting at the table earlier, waiting for dinner instead of grabbing takeout on the way home. He'd compliment the meals without me fishing for it. "This is amazing, babe." Or "You really nailed the sauce." But every time he said it, I'd feel this bittersweet tug in my chest. Because part of me wanted to forgive the old version of him who doubted me. And another part of me wanted him to realize that I didn't need his approval anymore. One Friday evening, I decided to cook something special. A rosemary steak with garlic mashed potatoes and a side of roasted asparagus. It wasn't just dinner. It was a quiet statement. When Ryan came home and saw the table set, candles lit, wine poured, he raised an eyebrow. "Wow, this looks fancy. What's the occasion?" I smiled softly. "No occasion. Just wanted to try something new." We ate in silence for a while. Then, between bites, he said something that made my heart freeze mid-beat. "You know, I didn't think you'd stick with it," he admitted. "I mean, most people would have given up after that first disaster, but you really surprised me." It was meant as a compliment, but it hit differently. I smiled, nodded, but inside, I thought, "You didn't think I could because you never really believed I could do anything. You couldn't see yourself doing." But I didn't say that. Instead, I poured him another glass of wine and said, "Thanks. I just had to prove something to myself." He smiled. "Well, you did." And that was the moment I realized something. This wasn't about him anymore. He thought I'd been trying to win his approval. But what I'd really done was rediscover who I was before the doubts, before the eye rolls, before the jokes that cut too deep. The next day, while he was at work, I got an email that made my heart race. A local community center was hosting a small-town home chef showcase, basically amateur cooks presenting their best dish for a friendly competition. It wasn't about winning money or fame. It was about sharing what you love, and I wanted to share mine. I told Mia first. "Girl, you have to do it," she said immediately. "Imagine the look on Ryan's face when you tell him you're competing." I laughed nervously. "He'll probably think it's silly, so what?" Mia said, "You're not doing it for him. You're doing it for you. She was right. That night, when Ryan came home, I told him. He blinked, then chuckled. A cooking competition? Yeah, I said calmly. Why not? He shrugged, sipping his drink. No reason. Just didn't think you were into that kind of thing. I smiled, not bitterly, not angrily, but with a quiet sort of peace. Well, I said softly. People change. He didn't reply. Just looked at me for a moment longer than usual. And in that silence, I could tell he didn't know what to make of me anymore that weekend. I practiced nonstop. The kitchen looked like a tornado hit it, flour on the counters, notes stuck to the fridge. Timers going off every few minutes. But I didn't care. I was alive. Mia came over again, cheering me on, tasting everything, giving me her brutally honest feedback. This sauce? She said, heaven. That garnish? Too much parsley. Tone it down. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped a pan. By Sunday night, I had my dish ready. A creamy mushroom risotto with truffle oil, roasted garlic, and a sprinkle of fresh thyme. It smelled like confidence. When Ryan tasted it, he looked up, eyebrows raised. Damn, Elena. This is restaurant quality. I smiled. Glad you think so, he grinned. You're gonna win that thing maybe, I said, but even if I don't, I already did. He didn't understand what I meant. But he would, because soon he was going to see a side of me that he'd never seen before. And this time, I wasn't proving anything to him. I was showing myself what I was capable of all along. The morning of the Home Chef Showcase felt like the first day of school all over again. That mix of nerves, excitement, and the faint hum of what if I fail? I woke up before dawn, my heart racing faster than my coffee machine could brew. The smell of roasted beans filled the kitchen, but all I could taste was adrenaline. Ryan was still asleep. His soft snoring drifted from the bedroom while I double-checked my ingredients, packed my utensils, and went through my recipe one last time in my head. Mushroom risotto. Simple but soulful, just like me. I'd practiced it 100 times, maybe more. Each time, I'd tried to perfect not just the flavor but the feeling behind it, the heart. Because food, I'd learned, wasn't about showing off. It was about connection. When Ryan finally woke up and saw me dressed, apron tied, car keys in hand, he blinked. You're really doing this, huh? Yeah, I said, my voice steady but my hands trembling. He smiled, that casual, half-hearted kind of smile he used when he didn't quite understand something. Well, good luck. Knock him dead. I kissed his cheek and whispered, I will. The drive to the community center felt like a dream. Golden sunlight spilling over Seattle's quiet streets. Trees just starting to blush orange with fall. I kept my playlist low, letting soft country music fill the space while I rehearsed every step in my head. When I arrived, the parking lot was already buzzing. Dozens of people unloading coolers, mixers, and trays. The air was thick with nervous energy. The kind that makes your palms sweat and your heart beat too fast. Inside, I spotted Mia immediately, waving like a maniac from the crowd. Elena, over here. She hugged me tight. You ready to make everyone fall in love with your risotto? I laughed. Let's just hope they don't burn down the building first. Tables were set up in neat rows, each with a name card. Mine read Elena Thompson. Seeing my name printed like that gave me chills. It made everything feel real. The judges walked around, 3 of them, local chefs from small restaurants. They looked kind but serious. I watched one woman in a crisp white coat taste someone's chili and scribble notes, like she was judging a Michelin competition. When it was finally my turn, I took a deep breath and started. Olive oil first. The gentle hiss as the onions hit the pan. Garlic next, the smell spreading like comfort. Then the mushrooms, golden and earthy, soaking up the butter. I poured in the rice, listening to it crackle. Then came the broth, slowly, one ladle at a time, stirring until it absorbed. It was slow work, rhythmic, patient, almost meditative. All around me, I could hear chatter, pans clanging, laughter, and stress. But I was somewhere else, in my own little world of flavor and focus. When the final drizzle of truffle oil went on top, I looked down at the dish and smiled. It was beautiful. More than that, it was mine. When the judges approached, my hands shook. One of them, the woman in the white coat, asked gently, so what inspired your dish? I looked up at her and said, honestly, someone once told me I couldn't cook. And I believed them for a while. But then I decided to prove them wrong, not for them but for myself. She smiled softly. That's the best reason to cook. They took a bite. Then another. The woman's eyes widened slightly and one of the male judges nodded, murmuring, perfect texture. The balance is beautiful. I didn't breathe until they walked away. Then, I let out a shaky laugh, almost crying from relief. Mia ran over and hugged me. You did it, Elena. I told you. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud, not nervous, not doubtful, just proud. When the winners were announced, I didn't expect to hear my name. But then, second place, Elena Thompson for her mushroom risotto. The room clapped. I froze, then looked at Mia, who screamed like I'd just won an Oscar. Second place, girl. You did that. I walked to the stage, accepted the small silver ribbon, and smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. But the real victory came later when I got home that evening. Still glowing with excitement, Ryan was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. He looked up. Hey, how'd it go? I tried to sound casual. Not bad. I got second place. He blinked, surprised. Wait, really? Yeah, I said, hanging my ribbon on the fridge door. He stood up and walked over, looking at it. Wow. That's amazing, Elena. I'm proud of you. For a second, it almost felt like the validation I used to crave. But this time, I didn't need it. Because I already knew I'd done something great, with or without his approval, that night. As I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, smiling to myself. He didn't realize it yet, but something had shifted. The girl he once teased for burning pasta was gone. In her place was a woman who could turn a simple meal into a story and a scar into strength. And soon, he was going to see just how powerful that transformation really was. Asterisk for the first time in years. The house didn't feel heavy anymore. There was lightness in the air, in my steps, even in the way I spoke. The competition had given me something I didn't even know I'd lost, myself. After that day, things started to shift. I wasn't the same Elena who used to second-guess every little thing. Now, when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone strong, someone capable, someone who didn't need to prove her worth to anyone. But funny thing about growth, it doesn't just change you. It changes how everyone sees you. Ryan started noticing. He noticed how I carried myself. How I hummed in the kitchen again, how I smiled without waiting for approval. He noticed that I no longer asked, "Do you like it?" after dinner. I just served it, confidently, calmly, and maybe that confidence made him uneasy. One night, about 2 weeks after the competition, we were having dinner, grilled salmon, lemon butter sauce, roasted potatoes. He took a bite and said, "This is really good, babe. You've gotten incredible at this." I smiled softly. Thanks, but there was something in his tone, not just admiration, but confusion. Like he couldn't figure out how I'd gotten here without him noticing. The journey after dinner, he followed me into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. "So, what's next for you? You gonna do more competitions or something?" I shrugged. "Maybe. I'm thinking about starting a little cooking page online. You know, share recipes, stories. See where it goes." He raised his brows. "Seriously, that's actually kind of cool, kind of." That word used to bother me. "But not anymore." "Yeah," I said. "I think it's time I start doing things that make me happy." He nodded slowly, then said, "I like seeing you like this." And maybe he meant it, but there was something else behind his eyes. Something that almost looked like regret, because I think in that moment, Ryan realized that the woman he once teased for burning pasta was now outgrowing the small box he'd put her in, and it scared him a little. The next few weeks were strange. Asterisk. He became more affectionate, helping me in the kitchen, complimenting me more, asking about my day. But part of me couldn't tell if it was love or guilt. One night, while I was recording a little video for my new cooking page, just a simple how to make fluffy pancakes, Ryan walked in and watched quietly. When I finished, he said, "You're really doing this, huh?" I looked at him. "Yeah, I am." He smiled, but his eyes gave him away. "You're kinda different lately." "Different how?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just more confident. You don't seem to need me as much." I wiped my hands on a towel and said softly, "I guess I learned to stand on my own a bit." He looked at me for a long moment and said, almost under his breath, "Maybe I should have believed in you sooner." The room went quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge. I didn't respond because honestly, there was nothing to say. The apology wasn't really for me. It was for him. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how strange love can be. How it sometimes takes losing power over someone to finally see them. The next morning, something beautiful happened. One of my pancake videos went viral, like really viral. Thousands of views, comments from strangers saying things like, "This made my morning. You have such a calming voice. Your recipes feel like home." For the first time, my work was being seen by people who didn't know me, and they loved it. When I showed Ryan, he blinked in surprise. "Oh, that's insane. You're like internet famous or something." I laughed. "Not famous. Just lucky." He shook his head. "No, not luck. You earned this." And for the first time, I actually believed it, but deep down, I could sense something else stirring in him, a quiet realization that he'd underestimated me. And now, he was watching me shine in a light he never thought I could stand in. It wasn't about revenge anymore, not in the sharp, angry way. It was sweeter, softer. Because every meal I cooked now, every recipe I shared, every compliment I received from strangers, was a reminder that I had built something out of his doubt, and he knew it too. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me while I cooked, not saying anything, just watching, maybe remembering the girl who once burned pasta, and realizing that she'd turned that moment into the fire that made her unstoppable. And he wasn't wrong, because what started as pain had quietly turned into power. And soon, the world, not just Ryan, was about to see exactly what I was capable of. Asterisk, it's strange how life circles back sometimes. A few months ago, I couldn't even boil pasta without setting off the smoke alarm. Now, people were tagging me in cooking videos asking for tips, sending me pictures of recipes I'd shared online. Some days, it didn't even feel real. My little page had grown, not huge, but enough. Local followers, families trying my dishes, moms leaving sweet comments like, "You inspire me to start cooking again." It wasn't fame I wanted. It was connection, and I had found it, one recipe at a time. One night, I got an email from a local TV station. They were doing a short feature on everyday women who inspire, and someone had recommended me. They wanted to film a segment in my kitchen, talk about my journey, my passion for food, how I'd gone from a beginner to a woman who brought joy into other people's homes. Through her cooking, I stared at that email for a long time before it sank in. I had been noticed. The woman who once cried over burnt pasta and a careless smirk, was now being celebrated for the very thing someone said I couldn't do. When I told Ryan, he froze. "Wait, they're filming you? Like, on TV?" I nodded, smiling softly. "Yeah, next week," he blinked, trying to process it. Wow. That's amazing, Elena." Then he added quietly, "You really proved me wrong, didn't you?" I looked at him, not with pride or smugness, but with peace. "It wasn't about proving you wrong," I said gently. "It was about proving me right." He didn't answer. He just nodded slowly, and I could see the mix of pride and guilt in his eyes. The kind that comes when you realize someone became extraordinary, and you almost stopped them from ever believing they could. The following week, the TV crew came. They set up cameras in my kitchen, lights bouncing softly off the countertops. I wore my favorite cream sweater and tied my hair back. Mia was there too, of course, sitting on the side with a grin that said, "I told you so." The interviewer, a friendly woman named Holly, asked me about my story. I told her the truth, not the sugar-coated kind, but the honest one. I told her about the burnt pasta, the doubt, the quiet nights I spent teaching myself, failing, crying, and trying again. I told her about how food became my therapy, how every dish I made was a little act of forgiveness, for both myself and the person who once made me believe I wasn't enough. When the segment aired the next evening, Ryan and I sat together on the couch watching it. It felt surreal, seeing myself on screen, talking with calm confidence. My name flashing at the bottom, Elena Thompson, home chef and food creator. They showed clips of me stirring sauces, plating food, smiling as I talked about finding strength in small victories. And then, near the end, Holly asked me one final question. "So, Elena, if that person who once told you you couldn't cook is watching this right now, what would you say to them?" On screen, I smiled, softly, not bitterly, and said, "I'd say thank you, because their doubt lit a fire in me that I didn't know existed. And sometimes, we need someone to underestimate us, just so we can discover how powerful we really are." When those words played, Ryan went completely silent beside me. He didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there watching, his expression unreadable. After the segment ended, I turned off the TV. The room was quiet, heavy with everything that didn't need to be said. Finally, he spoke. "Elena, I don't even know what to say. I was such an idiot." I looked at him gently. "No, you were just human. We all are," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You deserved better than my words back then. I should have supported you, believed in you." I smiled, my voice calm and warm. "You don't have to apologize anymore, Ryan. I'm okay now." He looked at me and maybe for the first time really saw me. Not as the woman who burned dinner, not as the girl who tried too hard to please, but as someone strong, capable, and complete. That night, after he went to bed, I stood alone in the kitchen, the same place where everything had started. The lights were dim, the counters clean, the smell of baked bread still hanging in the air. I touched the counter, smiled, and whispered to myself, "You did it?" Because my revenge wasn't about hurting him. It was about healing me. And in the quiet glow of that kitchen, my kitchen, I realized something I'd never forget. The sweetest revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And doing it with grace.